You weren't just another chapter in the narcissist's life. You were the one they remember every single day, whether they admit it or not. You did not blend into the crowd of admirers and enablers. You did not flatter them just to stay close. You saw through their charm, you questioned their stories, you refused to become their puppet. You did not worship them blindly, you challenged them with truth. You held them accountable when no one else dared. You loved with intensity and depth, not to win them over, but because that's who you are. You gave when it was inconvenient, stayed when it hurt, and hoped for their healing long past the point others would have walked away. And that is what terrified them. You became a mirror they could not control. You did not reflect back the image they wanted to see. You showed them the cracks, the fear, the emptiness. And once that mirror turned back on them, everything started to unravel. They could not put you in a box. They could not cage you like they did with others. They could not manipulate you forever because eventually you started to wake up. You stopped reacting. You stopped explaining. You stopped giving. And that silence, that space, it screamed louder than any words could. It shook them to their core. You see, you carry something incredibly rare, something most people don't even recognize in themselves, let alone project so effortlessly. I'm talking about depth, integrity, a soul they could not imitate, no matter how hard they tried. In a world full of easy connections and superficial praise, you brought weight, richness, and truth into their life. And once they experienced it, nothing else could measure up. They tried to replace you, God knows they did, but every new person just reminded them of what they lost. Your strength made their games look foolish. Your strength exposed their shallowness. Your love, real love, became the standard they could not reach again. You did not just pass through their life, you altered it. You became the benchmark, the one they secretly compare everyone else to. And no matter how many distractions they surround themselves with, no matter how much they pretend they have moved on, you remain the one they cannot forget. Not because you begged for a place in their life, but because you were the only one who ever made them see themselves. Hi, I am Danish, a narcissistic abuse recovery professional. In today's episode, I am going to talk about 6 rare signs you were the one supply the narcissist could not replace. Number 1, you made them feel safe and then you withdrew it. They will never admit it, but you were the only place they ever felt safe. Not because they told you everything or opened up easily, they don't do that, but because your presence quieted something deep inside them. You were the calm in their chaos. You did not demand anything, you did not try to compete. You were just there, always, especially when their life was falling apart, unshakable in your love, even when they did not know how to receive it. They came to you when the masks grew heavy, when their lies got too tangled, when their perfectly curated and noisy world started to feel painfully empty. They never said it out loud. They did not thank you, but deep down they knew. When everything else felt fake, you felt real in comparison. You did not try to fix them, but you made them feel for the first time like maybe they didn't have to pretend so hard, and that scared them. Because safety was not something they earned. It was something you gave to them freely without any condition. But then they crossed too many lines. The disrespect piled up. Your soul became too heavy with the weight of what they kept doing. And so you did the one thing they never expected. You withdrew. Not out of revenge, of course, not out of anger. You simply stopped giving, stopped being their peace, stopped holding space they never respected. And that is the silence which screamed louder than any words ever could. It echoes in their new relationships. It shows up in moments when their new supply does not understand them the way you did. It haunts them when they realize no one else feels like home. Because the truth is, they were never addicted to your attention. They were addicted to your presence. That's the deepest reason. They were addicted to the feeling of being safe for the first time in their lives. Number two, they can't recreate the way you made them feel. They can find someone else who may be, let's say, prettier, quieter, or easier to manage. Someone who never questions their stories, someone who claps on cue, smiles when expected, and plays their role perfectly. But no matter who they find or how quickly they try to replace you, they will never be able to recreate the way you made them feel. Because with you, it was never about attention or praise. It was about presence, as I said. You made them feel seen, not because they deserved to be, but because you had a rare gift. You could see through the masks. You did not fall for their performance. You felt something deeper. You touched the part of them they spend their entire life hiding. For a brief moment, in their carefully crafted, curated illusion, they felt real. How? Because of your reality, the way you listened, the way you noticed their silence between the words, the way your energy did not demand anything. It gave them a taste of something they had never known before. What is that? Authenticity. You weren't just supply, you were depth, you were warmth, you were the mirror that did not just reflect their image, but revealed their hollowness. And even though they tried to control it, they became addicted to how your soul made them feel human, even if only for a moment. Now everything else feels shallow. Every new connection feels rehearsed. They chase the high, the spark, the intimacy you gave without effort, but nothing compares. Because people like you do not happen twice. And the cruel irony is, while they threw you away like you were nothing, they now scroll through your life, quietly watching, secretly aching, trying to recreate a feeling they destroyed with their own hands. Number three, they mocked your sensitivity but quietly needed it. Such a paradox. They called you too sensitive, like it was something to be ashamed of, like feeling deeply was a flaw. But it was your sensitivity that made you special. It was the part of you that noticed the tiny shifts in their energy, the change in their eyes, the tension in their voice. When they were pretending everything was fine, you picked up on things before they even understood them themselves. You asked if they were okay when no one else noticed. You sat with their silence and gave them the space to exist without pressure. You felt their moods in your body. You adjusted your tone, your words, your entire presence, because that is what empaths do. You were not reacting, you were responding in a compassionate way from a place of love, but they hated it. You were a mirror, a person they could not control. So they mocked you. They called you dramatic and too emotional. They said you overthink everything, but inside they needed you. They craved that emotional intelligence, that softness, that deep intuitive presence that made them feel safe even when they were drowning in shame. They never said thank you, but they anchored themselves to your nervous system like it was the only thing keeping them grounded. And now that you are gone, now that you have gone quiet, now that your presence no longer wraps around them like safety, they feel it, the flatness, the dullness, the lifeless energy of people who do not really see them. They laugh, but it feels forced. They speak, but no one hears what is underneath. And suddenly, your too much feels like everything they have ever needed. But it's gone. When they tried to shrink the most beautiful part of you, they lost the only person who made their world feel alive. Number 4, your depth made their superficial games pointless. The remarkable depth of your thoughts, emotions, reflections, and perceptions was profoundly unsettling to someone who thrived exclusively on superficiality. Narcissists typically rely on shallow interactions and meaningless games, don't they? Because true depth terrifies them. Why? Well, it demands self reflection, accountability, honesty, and vulnerability, all elements entirely beyond their emotional reach and experience. With you, their usual tactics felt glaringly trivial and insignificant. Your emotional richness, thoughtful insights, and profound internal world made their manipulations transparent and futile. Unable to match or even access your depth, they found themselves repeatedly striving and failing to discover another soul whose internal world was equally captivating, genuine, or meaningful. Number 5, your resilience shook their control to its core. Many individuals crumble under the continuous pressure and emotional erosion of narcissistic abuse. They weaken and become easier to manipulate and control. Yet your reaction differed fundamentally. Each calculated attempt to break your spirit only seemed to amplify your inner resolve and determination. Your resilience was not loud, aggressive, or openly defiant. It was calm, quiet, enduring, and profoundly strong, standing as a testament of your inner power. Regardless of their persistent manipulations, gaslighting, emotional sabotage, or attempts at control, you consistently bounced back, stronger and wiser each time. This extraordinary resilience turned you into their ultimate challenge, a persistent source of fascination, frustration, and obsession at the same time, because no other individual showed such powerful resilience, quietly yet firmly refusing to surrender. Number 6, and the last one. Your empathy was a power they could not harness. While narcissists traditionally exploit empathy, viewing it as a vulnerability or weakness, yours functioned differently. How? Well, your empathy was deeply intelligent, insightful, and profoundly self aware. Rather than becoming their emotional puppet, your empathy became an intuitive tool enabling you to understand them more deeply than they were comfortable admitting. That's the secret. You effortlessly saw through their facade, accurately predicting their next moves and understanding their underlying motives. Your empathy was not susceptible to exploitation. Instead, it served as a profound mirror, constantly reflecting their own truth back at them. Unable to harness or manipulate your empathetic insights, they found themselves repeatedly seeking that deep, genuine understanding in others, only to continually face disappointment and frustration. Basically, you were the torchbearer in their life. You were the light to their darkness. But they felt repelled by you. They felt consumed by you, which is why instead of learning and accepting that you were their biggest support, they tried to dim you. And the biggest driver, the motivation was the fear that you are better than them, the fear that you may turn out to be more useful than they are, the fear that you may know how to navigate life better. So that was it for today's episode. I hope you found it insightful and really deep. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. I will talk to you in the next one. Until then, as always, let the healing begin and continue.